Okay, here we go. Marta launched an object straight up at a speed of 160 feet per second. The height of the object is modeled by the equation h is equal to 160t minus 16t squared. Now, notice that we don't have a c value here. Our c value is usually the initial height if it's off a bridge or a balcony or a roof. But since there's no c value here, that means I'm starting from the ground. So I'm at ground level here. This is my ground. And she's going to be, Martha's launching an object. Let's say it's this ball. She's launching it up in the air. And it's going to take the path like this and land back on the ground. So, how much time will pass by for the object to return to the ground? So I want to figure out what t is. So it's asking for t, that means I have to plug in something for h. They don't give me h, but I know that when we're talking about returning to the ground, the height is equal to 0 on the ground. So I'm plugging in 0 for h. So 0 is equal to 160t minus 16t squared, and now I can solve for t. Now my quadratic is equal to 0, so I can use the quadratic formula, or I can factor out a t and solve it that way. A lot of us are used to using the quadratic formula, so I'm going to solve it that way. To make it a little bit easier on me, I'm going to simplify my expression before I use the quadratic formula. So and you don't have to do this step, but it makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to divide everything by 16. And the reason I can do this is because my left side is equal to 0. Because 0 over anything just is equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 160 divided by 16. I know 16 times 10 is 160. So I'm going to have 10t minus a t squared. Don't forget that this is still a minus here. This is still a negative 1. I'm going to rearrange this so it's easier for me to see. This is the same thing as 0 is equal to negative t squared plus 10t plus 0. All I did is rearrange this so I can easily see that a is equal to negative 1, b is equal to 10, and c is equal to 0 for plugging into my quadratic formula. A is always a coefficient in front of t squared, b is always a coefficient in front of t, and c is always the number on the outside, but since we had no number here, our answer is 0. So we have a negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 10 squared minus 4 times a negative 1 times 0 all over 2 times negative 1. Now because negative 4 times negative 1 times 0, there's a 0 here, so this whole term is going to go to 0. So that means I have negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 plus 0 over negative 2. Square root of 100 is 10. So I have negative 10 plus or minus 10 over negative 2. So I'm going to have two answers here, right? A positive and a negative case. So negative 10 plus 10 over negative 2. And negative 10 minus 10 over negative 2. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. 0 over negative 2 is just 0. Negative 10 minus a negative 10 is negative 20. Negative 20 over negative 2 gives me a positive 10. So, after how much time will the object return to the ground? Well, it's going to take more than 0 seconds for the ball to return to the ground. So I know that's actually the starting time. So I get rid of that one. And I'm left with, see, t is in seconds. So I have 10 seconds as how much time is going to pass by. So here, my h is 0, and my t is equal to 10 at that particular point. So that would be answer choice C.